become modernized. And my interest in beekeeping started when I was a teenager in the 1980s, and my grandfather kept honeybees on his farm. And so as the pandemic rolled around many, many years later, I was looking for a hobby that I could enjoy somewhat in solitude and that would be a long-term commitment for me. So I did a pair of things that were fairly instrumental in getting started. One was I took some classes online about beekeeping with Penn State University, $60 for 10 classes, includes blueprints for making your own hives, blueprints for making a solar wax melter. The second thing that I did was join the Northwest Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association, which has been in existence for a couple decades, and we always enjoy visiting with the Waterford Community Days and the Crawford County Fair, the Erie County Fair, the Tom Ridge Environmental Center Presque Isle Days to present to the public about bees. And so recently, on Sunday, April the 19th, I installed 3 packages of bees into hives, and that was a great experience. And Eric, maybe let's roll a clip from that installation. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Common Liberty Podcast. I'm Jeffrey, and today is Sunday, April 19th, 2026. Today we're at my bee yard in northwestern Pennsylvania. I'm a member of the Northwestern Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association, and I'm fortunate to have a mentor, Steve Odom, from Hogs and Honey in Waterford. Hogs and Honey has provided me with a couple packages of bees to install into new hives this new year of beekeeping. I had 3 of my 6 hives survive the winter, and I'm very happy with that. The bees have had a lot of challenges the last few years with nosema and varroa mites and colony collapse disorder. However, today, as I'm installing the queen and workers and drones from these packages, some of the process here involves opening up the package and removing the bees. And this package of about 5,000 bees is the root of a hive at full strength will number about 60,000 bees. A healthy queen lives 3 to 5 years, and a healthy queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day, although usually around 1,000, depending on the environment and also how healthy the queen is. When the queen lays an egg, it's about the size of a grain of rice, and the nurse bees will get instructions from the queen about which type of bee to make. And if the queen needs more worker bees, the nurse bees will put royal jelly and pollen and nectar into the honeycomb cell with the egg, and it takes about 21 days to make another worker bee. If the queen says we need some drones, and the drones are the males and their only purpose is to mate with the queen, but if the queen says we need more drones around the neighborhood, then the nurse bees will secrete that royal jelly out of their forehead, and then they will pack in some nectar and they will pack in some pollen, and it takes 24 days for the nurse bees to create a drone. So this is the lid to the package, and this is an important tool that we'll come back to in just a moment. I'm using my hive tools here to extract the lid and then also extract the can of syrup, which feeds the honeybees while they are in transit. These bees are carniolan bees, which come from Eastern Europe, Slovenia, and Austria. They're known to be gentle and relatively good producers of honey. There are a total of 8 species of bees across the world which make honey. And in Pennsylvania, we have 400 species of bees. In North America, altogether, we have about 500 species of bees. A couple years ago, I was very fortunate to travel in Mexico, and I even saw stingless bees. that are kept in the traditional Mayan method, the same method that Mayan beekeepers used 3,000 years ago. So here's the can of syrup, which feeds the bees while they are in transit. This is the lid to the package. So the process here is remove the can of syrup, not all the way, but close enough that I can pull it out rather quickly, and then slide the lid to the package back over it, because very, very quickly I will be putting these bees into the hive box. This is a 10-frame Langstrom hive box. The Langstrom frames are easy to maintain, make it easy to treat the bees. For varroa mites, I use oxalic acid vapor, which are crystals that you heat up. And once vaporized, the vapor will kill the varroa mites because it affects their lungs, but it won't kill the bees. So now I'm turning the package over, and it does appear that there is a queen cage in this package, which is great news. Okay, so here we go into the hive. Shaking the bees will not kill them, it will not harm them. And so now I've got to locate the queen cage. Here we are. All right, ladies, let's get this queen cage ready for you. The first step is to remove the cork so that the worker bees can then eat the candy plug. It's like cotton candy, and then release the queen. We're going to attach the queen cage to the side of this frame using a rubber band. Okay, so the cork is out, and we're going to point the queen cage up so that if one of the worker bees inside dies, that body will fall to the bottom and it will not prevent the queen from climbing out. All right. Okay, very successful here. Putting the frame inside the hive. And we'll shake a couple more of the bees into the hive. This is their home. And at this point, we can take a super so that the hot air will rise. The bees have a little bit more space to move around in. And they are ready.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun getting out there and seeing how the bees, I've always just seen pictures of the little boxes and stuff. I never got up close and I was a little nervous, but seeing all those bees getting shaked out of a box right up close to you, and you're just like, oh, they're not going to bother me.
Right, yeah.
Except for maybe the couple I found in my car after we left that were stuck to me.
Yeah, there's always a couple hanger-ons, and there was a lot of syrup flowing around those package boxes, the plywood boxes with the hardware cloth, the screening. And once we found the queen cage and put the queen inside the hive, the worker bees are going to work solidly for a couple days to chew out the cotton candy plug and then release the queen so she can start directing the worker bees and laying eggs and building the hive.
You said you went and checked it today, right?
Well, I went and checked yesterday, and I discovered that the first hive that we put into the brood boxes had bees that were clustered in a ball on one frame. And that's what bees do to keep warm. When the temperatures get lower than 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the bees will gather into a ball and they will rub their abdomens together to create friction heat and then flap their wings to distribute that heat throughout the hive, because the queen likes the hive to be about 88 degrees to 94 degrees Fahrenheit. So putting a check onto that hive told me that the bees are acting normally and that it's a good start to the season.
Oh, that's excellent. I've always loved honey. I remember one year my family got me a big long thing, and it had all these different varieties of honey from different flowers, like orange blossom. I think the most common one's usually clover that we feel, right?
Right. So that's spring honey.
Okay.
When you see a lot of dandelions out and a lot of clover out, the bees will seek out the pollen on the clover, and then they will start to produce honey based off that pretty quickly. So it's a May or June harvest. Usually there are 2 harvests for an established beekeeper, one in the May-June time frame, and then another one later in the season, maybe October, November, once the full season of beekeeping is over, in this part of the country anyway. And the bees really do enjoy warmer temperatures. It's the moisture and the humidity, the rainfall that beekeepers are really concerned about. Bees kept in Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, California, even in Florida, play a huge role in pollination. And in California in particular, hives in their brood boxes are stacked up on a flatbed truck. Sometimes as many as 200 brood boxes are stacked up on a truck and driven into an almond orchard so that they can pollinate the almond trees, and then the almond tree owners can process the almonds into almond milk that we buy in the grocery store. Hive theft in California alone is a $200 million a year industry. And many hive owners have taken to the practice of putting Apple AirTags inside the hive boxes. So even if their hives are stolen, they'll be able to trace the bees back home.
Oh my gosh. I have not seen that. I know my dad's side of the family is from an area called Walnut Creek, known for growing walnuts back in the day before it became very developed.
Near San Francisco.
Yeah, it's in the Bay Area, yeah. So I think it's a little closer to Oakland, but more on that side of the bay.
Sure.
But, growing up there, like, that was one of the big things, not bees per se, but just the amount of different fruits and nuts and cranberries and all kinds of stuff that the amount of food California produces. So it makes sense that they're taking these brood boxes and to different places in California for this harvest.
That is actually hard work for the bees, being trucked into an orchard, and then the brood boxes are sometimes partially distributed throughout the orchard, but they're secured down with tie-down straps, and then there's netting that covers them. So it's industrial, very hard work. It's not what the bees are typically accustomed to, but they are capable of it. And it is in their nature to pollinate and to interact with the nectar of all kinds of fruits and flowers. So there's a practice of beekeeping that we're familiar with in North America. And there are different beekeeping practices around the world. And I've had the opportunity to observe beekeeping in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico as it was done the same way 3,000 years ago by the Mayans.
Oh, that's awesome.
And those bees, it is so amazing and so awesome that these are stingless bees. The Spanish word is abejas, and the full phrase is abejas sin pica, or bees without a stinger. And so these bees are very gentle, very productive, and their natural life cycle in the Yucatan is making a nest, a hive, inside a log. And they will chew one hole in this log, kind of in the center, as the single entry and exit point to the hive that they're building inside the log. And they will chew up the inside of the log to carve it out and to actually put honeycomb inside. To protect the single entry-exit point, these stingless bees have a single jaguar called the jaguar bee protecting that entry-exit point. And it's called the jaguar bee because this bee has larger mandibles, and they bite to protect the hive from an intruder that might try to test that entrance. And because, of course, there's a lot more sunshine and flowers and plants, a wide variety of flora grows in the Yucatan Peninsula. They have a rainy season, sometimes just a half hour of rain in the afternoon. But these are ideal conditions for the bees. And so you'll see a frame made up of long, thick branches in the shape of an A. And the bar in the middle of the A is a shelf where these logs are stored by the beekeeper. And there might be one of these shelves a third of the way up, halfway up, 2/3 of the way up. And they may even have 4 or 5 log hives on these shelves. So it's a very efficient method of keeping the bees. And because they don't have stingers, it's something that children can learn very quickly, and they can adapt to it.
It also probably made it a lot easier for them to master that skill back in the day before, modern bee suits.
Right, yes. There is actually a Mayan bee god that would be worshipped. And in particular, the Mayan priests that knew how to count the calendar, their role with the Mayan bee god was telling the beekeepers when to harvest and when to do certain maintenance around the beekeeping practices around the hives. So April and October are 2 usual times that the priest would tell the Mayan beekeepers, it's time to harvest the bees and open up those logs. In modern times, the Kellogg Foundation, famous for its cereal, the Kellogg Foundation has donated several $1 million to Mayan cultural projects to preserve the 3,000-year-old practice of Mayan beekeeping.
Also, on Sunday, you talked about maybe, 8 species of honeybee?
That's right.
And do you know how many species of bee there are in general, or are there like other classifications besides there's honeybee? What are some of the other classifications?
Well, worldwide, there's 500 species of bees.
Okay.
And in Pennsylvania, we actually have 400 of those species of bees.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. And so there are 8 species of bees worldwide that will produce honey. And, of course, it's the only insect that produces food that humans can eat right away. And there's been long evidence for thousands of years of beekeeping in Egypt, in Tibet, all across the world. So there are buckfast bees that originate in England with Brother Adam, a monk at the Buckfast Abbey, who grew bees. So that's how we get that name. There are
those abbeys. We get a lot of beer and bees.
Mead, yes,
Yeah, beer,
fermented honey beer.
And mead,
yes, yes. Meadville, just south of here, may have a connection. to fermented honey. So there's buckfast bees from England. There are Italian bees from Central Europe. There are Carniolan bees, which are Eastern European in Slovenia and some in Austria, some in the Ukraine. There are Saskatraz bees, which are Russian, and they are gray and black stripes, not the golden black.
Gray and black.
Yes, gray and black.
That's pretty cool.
Those bees are specially acclimated to the cold.
Okay.
Like all the other bees, they don't like moisture, but they are especially adapted to the cold. The bees can enjoy heat, extreme temperatures of heat. Like in Egypt, they can enjoy the cold. Like in Russia, it's the moisture that beekeepers want to prevent.
I know in the winter, too, with Russia, it gets pretty dry, so that's probably helped those bees.
Right.
It's pretty cool that they're able to survive those rough winters.
Yeah, the bees are very resourceful, and when they're gathered into that cluster in the hive, usually they're clustered around the queen because the queen controls the genetics of the hive and she gives the direction to all the worker bees and the drones. They'll, rub their abdomens together, create some friction heat, flap their wings, and distribute that heat. So the Mexican bees, the abejas sin pica, they produce a honey which is darker in color because, of course, the soil is darker and it's got more humus and loam in it, and the old trees and old plants that have died and decayed and kind of formed a nutrient-rich layer in the soil. Those bees, the Mexican bees, the abejas, tend to be a little bit larger. They're about the size of maybe a cockroach or even a grasshopper, very large. In 2023, my father and I took a trip to the Yucatan, and that's where we found the Mayan beekeeper near some Mayan ruins called Aque in the north of the Yucatan Peninsula. And we had a chance to buy a bottle of the honey, and the honey is darker in color. It's like molasses in color, but it tastes exactly like the honey that we have here in North America.
Oh my gosh. I love honey, and I know like locally they have like the spring, the summer, and like the fall honey is usually right on the bottle. It's fun trying the different ones and seeing which ones I liked and didn't like, and
Sure.
But what about these what about the African bees?
The African bees are also larger than the European bees, and it is true that they are more aggressive. They are more territorial, is probably a good way to describe it. Of course, all bees are territorial to a degree because of the ocelli, the 3 eyes on the top of their head. Scientists think that those ocelli may have to do with planetary magnetism, and like birds, it helps them decide their direction and also how they communicate their travels with other bees.
Were the bees affected? I know recently, this just got me thinking. I know like when we have the solar eclipse, do the bees react to that?
So you may have some anecdotal reports of bee reaction to an eclipse when for a few moments, maybe 5 minutes, there's no sunlight. The sun is excluded or occluded by the moon. And the key again is the temperature. If the temperature drops to about 40 degrees, that's when the bees start to think about becoming inactive. Not quite true hibernation like a bear, but they become inactive. So in that short period of time, if the bees are already located in a northern climate and that eclipse happens at the time of year when temperatures could already be in the 50s or the 40s, that period of 5 minutes during an eclipse where temperatures drop as a result of a lack of sunlight, yes, that could theoretically provide some kind of reaction in the bees.
I was more asking, like, do they, like, bees obviously have to go out and get the pollen and nectar and all that good stuff and bring it back. When the solar eclipse happens, do they, like, tend to run back to the hive going, it's dark, go back.
Okay, so yes, that is probably the first reaction that the queen gives. Something strange is happening. Everybody come home. We got to be safe. Okay. And the queen will release pheromones to communicate that. And it wouldn't be the banana smelling pheromone that tells the hive to swarm and attack an intruder. Okay. So yes, the queen may decide that this is very unusual and everybody's got to come back to the hive right away.
Okay. Yeah, I actually got to see 2 eclipses.
Nice.
I was living on the West Coast near Portland during the one in, what was it, 2017?
Yes,
Something
August
like that.
2017.
August 2017. I remember I was out there with my grandma holding a welding mask. But we were not in complete totality in that one, but it was about 90-ish% totality because we were a little north of Portland where it really hit. And then we got to see the one, what was it?
2024.
2024.
April 8th, 2024.
April 8th, 2024. Just over 2 years ago now. And I remember listening to the birds, and you hear
Yes.
you can hear that something's going on that's different with nature. Like there's a little bit of a panic.
Right, the silence. Yes.
And I know historically, like animals and humans kind of freaked out during solar eclipses. They're like, no, this is weird.
Well, yeah, that's a normal reaction to a change in the environment. And it's great that you bring up the subject of eclipses. I was born during a solar eclipse on March 7th, 1970. And I didn't believe my parents when they first told me when I was 21. So I went to the microfilm for the New York Times because that's what the university library had. It was not digital, it was microfilm. And lo and behold, that was true. So you mentioned the eclipse in August of 2017. That was an eclipse where the totality passed through the Midwest
Yes.
of North America.
I saw it on the West Coast.
Right, yeah. So the path of totality actually passed over our family farm outside of St. Louis, where I watched Grandpa keep bees in the mid-1980s. And so there was a fantastic connection there. I hadn't yet conceived of the idea of beekeeping as a hobby. And in 2024, I was keeping bees, and later that same day, I went up to check on the bees. And by the time I got there, it was situation normal. There weren't any signs at all of disturbance. But I do agree that the bees would react in probably a lot of surprise. And maybe people are familiar with the movie Apocalypto, where there's an important scene towards the end of the movie where the Aztecs witness a eclipse, and therefore they hold off on sacrificing the Mayans. Well, that depiction of the eclipse is not entirely accurate. The Aztecs and the Mayans had advanced calendars, and nobody would have been surprised that an eclipse would have been happening. It would have been something planned for and celebrated. And, of course, the priests played their role to convince the crowd that their supplications had returned the sun to its proper place. For my personal meaning of eclipses, just being born during a solar eclipse, to me it's a union of solar and lunar forces. The sun and the moon come together and create something that we don't see very often. So the 2017 and the 2024 eclipses, of course, I took time off that day to see the eclipse, and that gave me time to go play with the bees. And I just love the way that the bee equipment makes my car smell.
I mean, it must be nice smelling like honey all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was I going to... I totally lost my train of thought. I'll let you go.
Well, one of the other beekeeping practices that's noteworthy is found in Japan. And in Japan, beekeepers use a square box, and they do not use Langstroth frames. In North America, we have a box that is slightly rectangular. It holds up to 10 frames where bees will start their honeycomb on a foundation. And in Japan, They will start a brood box at the very bottom, put the bees inside the brood box, and then stack more of these boxes, same size. They're square rather than slightly rectangular. And the Japanese beekeepers do not use frames. Once they seal up that box, the bees make their honeycomb in whatever shape they design based on the space that they're in. It's very natural. Now, you may see pictures on the internet and social media of heart-shaped honeycomb. Well, that's Photoshop. That's AI. Okay, it doesn't really happen like that. It can happen close to that. There are U-shaped comb with other, comb kind of folded into the middle of the U shape. Sometimes pareidolia, and our love for bees kind of convinces us this is heart-shaped comb. But it's easy to love the bees without trying to find patterns in nature. So the Japanese beekeepers will stack up these boxes that are square with no frames inside. They'll put the inner lid and the outer cover on top, and then they'll let the bees do their thing. They will create honeycomb and create honey, and there's an entry and exit part at the bottom of the hive, just like our hive boxes here in North America. When it comes time to harvest the honey, the Japanese beekeepers have a wire with 2 rings at each end, and the Japanese beekeeper will pull this wire through the seam between 2 boxes to cut the wax and to cut the propolis, which is a substance a little bit like spray foam insulation that the bees will use to create closures and cracks in the hive boxes, or to seal out little openings where the boxes might not be perfectly aligned so the wind and moisture doesn't get in. Because once a little bit of wind and moisture gets in, and the bees and the queen like to keep it at a certain temperature, then there can be condensation at the very top of the beehive. And that is the number 1 issue we want to prevent. Of course, number 2 are the varroa mites, and third are diseases. Moisture is the bee killer. And if moisture condensates at the top of the beehive where the lids are, it will drop down onto the bees, unsuspecting, when they're working on the comb. So the Japanese beekeepers have a very established practice of beekeeping, and it's very successful. The Mexican beekeepers, the Mayan beekeepers, have a very long established practice. But one of the most interesting beekeeping practices can be found in Tibet, where there's a special hallucinogenic honey that's found in hives that are situated on cliff walls.
Oh, that's cool.
And these are sheer rock faces that have to be climbed up very carefully, and then you're actually doing work to harvest the comb so that you can extract the honey. And because of the terroir, because of the pollen and the nectar that these bees are gathering, as they produce the honey inside the honeycomb, once humans get to it, it's hallucinogenic. I've never tried it.
What kind of plant are the bees going after for it to become hallucinogenic? Is that part of it, or is it just something that the bees do?
It's probably a combination of the different types of plants, how long it takes them to make the honey versus how long it takes to ferment and become psychoactive in one way. It also probably depends on the person ingesting the honey and how receptive they are to the enzymes and the ingredients in that honey. So between the Japanese, the Mayan, and the Tibetan bees, there's a very interesting practice of our relationship between humans and bees. Now, that said, there are some challenges to beekeeping that maybe we'll talk about in a future episode as we track the progress and health of my bees. Last year I had 6 hives. 3 of them overwintered. 3 of them did not, and usually that's because of mite load, the varroa mite. But recently, last Sunday, you and I went up to the bee yard, and I installed 3 new hives. So I have a total of 4. And my goal one of my goals in beekeeping is I give away my honey. Once I harvest it, I take the honeycomb and I put it into a double sieve strainer with wire mesh, and then the force of gravity presses the honey out of the honeycomb, and it drips through the sieve, strains out the honeycomb, and into a 5-gallon bucket. And then I can put it in jars and put bee stickers on the jars and give it away. I don't sell it for the most part. If somebody wants to offer me $10 for a jar of honey, hey, I'm right over here. But my real goal, aside from enjoying the practice of beekeeping, I'd like to harvest honey and experiment with recipes. And in medieval Europe, honey was used not just to make mead and to make honey beer, but also drinks like apple juice would have been sweetened with honey. And I think that was called Simon, Cymen. And then there's another drink called Pyser, Pyser. And that's grape juice sweetened with honey.
Okay.
So I'm interested in developing a recipe where honey could be used in sweetening fruit juices, maybe with some other flavorings in it, as natural as possible. I don't want to give up too much of the recipe I'm experimenting with or the specific fruit juice other than apple juice or grape juice that I'm experimenting with. But rather than attempt to build my bee yard up from 6 hives to a commercial level of production such as 300 hives. My mentor, Steve Odom from Hogs and Honey in Waterford, Pennsylvania, he has about 300 hives, and he sells his honey at supermarkets, large supermarket chains like Giant Eagle or Wegmans, Surefine.
Sure enough, before we even met, I had Hogs and Honey. I like my sleepy time tea at night.
Right.
I love the idea of using honey as a sweetener because it has much more depth than just plain white sugar or
processed sugar.
Or what is it, the corn syrup.
Right.
And there's so much better flavor with honey. Another thing I'm obsessed with is the hot honey that's becoming very popular.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tried that at all.
I haven't tried the hot honey.
You got to try it on pizza, man. It's delicious.
I've heard something like sriracha honey pizza.
It's the guy who did it with Dave's Hot Honey. He had found was traveling through Brazil, I think it was, or somewhere in South America. I think it was Brazil. But he went into this small town that he had hiked into, and they had like jars of honey with peppers steeped in it, and they would put that on the pizza. And he like tried it, and it was just obsessed with the flavor, and came back to the U.S. and then got into the New York pizza scene. And rest is history. Now people are begging for a Dave's Hot Honey sign outside the pizza shop. But boy, this stuff is good.
I bet it's delicious.
I think it mixes with the cheese somehow. I don't get it. It's almost like an opposite of flavors, but that's what's...
It's an interesting combination of sweet and savory flavors.
Yeah. Also, I had a question. I was at the grocery store today. You know, we generally see honey as that beautiful golden liquid. We've talked a little bit about some of the stuff in Mexico. What are some other ways people prepare honey? I saw in the international aisle they had some British stuff, and they had it was like a creamy farm honey or something they called it.
Right.
Does that have like more of the pupus or some of the comb in it? I don't really understand what that is.
Okay. So Hogs and Honey produces creamed honey. Okay. And creamed honey is produced by a method very similar to creamed milk. Okay. Where it is allowed to age just a little bit, and then it's processed through a special machine that might introduce a little bit more air, and then it is blended, and it's still 100% honey, but it comes out much more creamy and more of a white color.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one method of preparing honey rather than straight out of the jar. Another method of preparing honey doesn't involve the post-production, the post-bee honey processing, but it involves the terroir of the environment surrounding the bees, where they're getting their pollen and their nectar and their water. And in North Carolina, there is a bee farm where all the hives are surrounded by lavender. And because of that particular terroir and the bees getting all their pollen, all their nectar from this amazing field of lavender, the honey comes out purple. And it's the only place in the world where you get purple honey like that.
That's awesome.
So that's a second method, very distinctive purple honey. Now another method even, and this is something Steve at Hogs and Honey does, it does depend on what you're growing around it. So it could be clover honey, which is, typical spring harvest. Could be red bamboo. He grows a lot of red bamboo around his hives. It could be orange honey. Sometimes there are orange peels laid out. Sometimes there's even orange trees in the area.
I remember the gifts that I got that I talked about earlier. It had, one of them was orange blossom honey, and it was like that beautiful orange color that you're talking about. And it was wild because the thing had honey going from very light in color to very dark. It was like 8 little jars of it.
Yeah, that's a great observation. The color of the honey is definitely related to the time of the year that the bees are harvesting the nectar and the pollen. So the clover honey will be a much lighter color. It will be yellow, not even gold. And when we get the gold honey, sometimes we even call it Amish gold, because the Amish communities in central Pennsylvania are well known for producing a specific kind of honey. But that's where there's a little bit darker soil, maybe different flowers that the bees are getting nectar from, different trees maybe that they're getting pollen from, other sources. So the darker the color of the honey sometimes suggests harvested later in the year.
Okay. And that's just because it was sitting in the hive longer, or?
It's really more related to the soil and then the trees, maybe sometimes the water.
Okay.
But the bees will travel up to 3 to 8 miles to find a source of food. And maybe this is a good point to load another clip from our bee adventure on Sunday.
Yeah, certainly.
The Northwestern Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association annually participates in the Presque Isle Days held at the Tom Ridge Environmental Center. We also participate in the Waterford Community Days. We have professional beekeepers and volunteers like myself from the Beekeepers Association that can discuss bees with everybody who visits the fair. The Waterford Community Days are then followed with the Crawford County Fair and the Erie County Fair. Really great time every year to meet new people and to learn about keeping bees. The Northwest PA Beekeepers Association also holds classes at Asbury Woods. Right here we have a drone. You can tell it's a drone because the body is a little bit larger than the worker bee here. Here at my fingertips, you can see a drone and you can see a worker bee. And the worker bees are a little bit smaller. Here's another worker bee alongside the drone. So the drone's main purpose is to mate with the queen during mating flights. The queen bee uses 4 different methods of communication with the nurse bees and the drones. And the first method, of course, is when the queen exudes pheromones as chemical signals to the brood. Instructions on what eggs to lay, where to repair honeycomb, to drag dead bodies of bees out of the hive. There's actually mortuary bees that drag dead bodies of dead bees out of the hive. And that's because the queen likes to keep the hive between 88 and 94 degrees Fahrenheit. So all of these jobs, about 2 different jobs, 24 different jobs in a hive that the queen will assign, is necessary for the hive to thrive. And once a queen begins to lay about 1,000 eggs or more a day on a regular basis, the nurse bees will begin to communicate with the queen using the pheromones, but also the hive uses a wiggle dance, which is for long distance information, and then the round dance, which is for 10 to 80 yards short distance information. The round dance is a communication about a spiral path that a scout bee will fly in concentric circles farther and farther away from the hive. When the scout bee identifies a source of pollen or nectar or water, the scout bee will return to the hive and do a smaller version of the round dance to communicate to the rest of the hive where in a short distance away is the pollen or the nectar or the water. If the source of food is located farther away, then the wiggle dance will be used. It's a much more complex kind of dance with side-to-side motion, up and down motion, the frequency of the wiggles. All of that matters in communicating to the other worker bees in the hive where they can forage for pollen, which is the protein, the nectar, which is the carbohydrates, and the water. Okay. So as you can see, we've got a good bit of wind up here at the apiary. And the bees are okay with wind. The bees are okay with heat. The bees are okay with cold. It's moisture that we want to protect the bees from. The reason for that is because the bees, like all insects, have an exoskeleton. And along the bottom of the shell, the exoskeleton, are tiny holes called spiracles. And those spiracles are the holes by which the bees breathe. They're actually the trachea. The bee will flex its exoskeleton to make these spiracles, these holes, open and close. And that's how the bees breathe. Along with the spiracles, the bees have 2 stomachs. One stomach is just for processing food, the pollen, the nectar, and the water. And the second stomach secretes enzymes so that the bee can make honey. And the bee has an additional gland in its forehead to secrete the royal jelly. Okay, so now this can of syrup is loosening up. Going to kind of wedge it into the package so I can get the lid. The lid is actually a very important tool. Once I pull out this can of syrup, this is the food for the bees during their transit, I need to quickly replace the lid so that bees don't fly out and fly away. So this will take a quick moment there. And it does appear that there's a queen cage covered up on one side. So now we're going to flip this so I can shake the bees into the hive. This shaking will not kill the bees. It will not harm the bees. It's true that they don't like sudden noises or vibrations, but this will not harm the bees. And I'm still searching to make sure the queen cage is viable. Okay, so now we will, here is the queen cage. And very gently, I will use the brush, and we will brush away the bees from the queen cage. The queen is inside this cartridge. There are some worker bees. The worker bees will chew through a cotton candy plug in order to release the queen. My role is to remove the cork, which is immediately next to the candy plug. And then we use a rubber band to mount the queen cage onto the frame. Here's the queen cage. There's a queen inside this package right here with worker bees. And right now they're communicating with the queen. How can we chew through this cotton candy to free the queen? And so worker bees will enter that tunnel and chew the top end of the cotton candy plug. The worker bees inside will chew their end of the cotton candy plug, and that will release the queen. Keeping the queen cage secure is fairly important. And this seems to be secure so that I can load the clip into the hive. Okay, so we have successfully loaded 2 packages into new welcoming hives. I'll come back in about 5 days to make sure that the worker bees have freed the queen. And the queen will then take root and start a hive. And as soon as about 80% of the frames, there's 6 frames in there right now, sorry ladies, there's 6 frames inside the hive, and I will add at least 3 more. This is a 10-frame Langstroth hive, very easy to maintain, very easy to treat for mites, very easy to clean, very easy to store. And so all of these bees will be able to communicate with their queen. They are now ready to forage for food, pollen, nectar, and water, and we're ready for a successful season of beekeeping up here at my apiary. Beekeeping gives me a lot of joy, finding bees that are alive at the end of the winter. Gives me a lot of peace of mind. I love the way it makes my car smell. There's nothing wrong with the interior of your car smelling like honey. I've been a beekeeper for about 5 years or now, and I consider myself a novice. And 5 years from now, I think I'll still be a novice. There's always something new to learn from bees. They are very intelligent creatures. Their sense of smell is about 900 times stronger than a human's. So there's plenty to learn. If you let the bees do their thing, they will take over the space that you provide for them and begin to follow the course of nature. There are endless benefits to learning beekeeping, and the Northwest PA Beekeepers Association has its annual picnic June 20th, 2026 at Ernst Seeds in Meadville. Please visit our website at Northwest PA Beekeepers, nwpabeaks.org. You can Google us, you can find us, you can buy memberships to our organization and take seminars and request other kinds of training. So thank you very much for joining Common Liberty Podcast. I'm Jeffrey, and load the clip.
That was a good clip.
Yeah, it's always great to get out with the bees and work with them. There are a couple tools that are important to the practice of beekeeping. One is the hive tool, which you can use to separate frames that have been propolized and kind of glued into the brood box. The hive tool can be used to brush away dead bees. There is a bee brush, usually very soft with long horsehair. Then there's also the smoker, which is a tool we use to light up maybe biomass pellets or pine needles or newsprint. You always want to avoid burning treated wood because of the chemicals. You don't want to get that around the bees.
I know that's a big thing with a lot of stuff, that treated wood you got to be careful with.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you use the smoker and you light it up and you close the lid, there are bellows on the back of the smoker, and you can pump the bellows, and that produces cool white smoke. And that's really what you want. Because the bees breathe through tiny holes called spiracles in their exoskeleton, their shell, when the smoke gets around those spiracles, the breathing holes, the trachea, the bees have less oxygen to take in. And that's what makes them docile. They become a little bit less active, less likely to sting. So a beekeeper will wear a veil, a helmet with a mesh that comes down to protect the face. That's sort of the minimum of protection that beekeepers recommend. Or a jacket, which goes all the way up to the wrists, and usually you wear leather gloves around the cuff so that your flesh is protected there. And then that jacket has tight elastic around the waist to further seal up. Some beekeepers will even wear a full suit. And sometimes it's important to tuck your pants inside your boots. So it depends. You can start out with a very mild, gentle, docile hive of bees, but because the bees can change throughout the season, like there may be a different drone that the queen mates with, and it produces a strain of slightly more aggressive bees, and that can have a ripple effect. And it can also be a drone that is maybe more proactive in detecting swarms, or a drone that's proactive in detecting intruders to the hive, and then the bees get the command to swarm. So there's a wide variety of jobs inside the hive. The nurse bees working with the eggs, the worker bees fabricating the honeycomb, cleaning the honeycomb. I think maybe the last point I want to make today is about the shape of the honeycomb, the hex shape of the honeycomb. Researchers have found that the cells in the bees' eyes are hexagonal. So we think that the honeycomb itself is constructed in a hexagonal fashion because that's what the bees are seeing.
Okay. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I'd always known that they had hexagonal eyes. Like they've talked about that in like TV shows and stuff. But yeah, I guess that makes a little bit of sense.
Bees are wonderful creatures. They are amazing partners in the ecosystem with humans, and we need to do everything we can to protect the bees and to be mindful of the environment that we all live in.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there was a few years ago, there was a big push to save the bees. And,
right.
You know, I think they are doing a bit better now, aren't they? Or
there are definitely better beekeeping practices. Beekeeping practices are always evolving. Penn State University has a good lab. University of Cincinnati has a good lab. There's a couple in California and in Texas also. Are the bees doing better than they were a couple years ago? This year, we are cautiously optimistic. Now, last year, the winter of 2024, going into 2025, there was a severe epidemic of colony collapse disorder. And we'll come back to that in another episode as we check in on the bees over the course of the year here. But in 2024 to the early spring, winter of 2025, researchers identified a disease called nosema, which was co-occurrent with the mites. And so those two factors and maybe some other factors in the environment contributed to the collapse of about 60% of all hives in North America in that season.
Oh, wow.
Tragic. Super, super terrible outcome. And so with the study that occurred last year with what caused that colony collapse disorder, we feel like we've found the cause and that we are adjusting our mite treatments and how we maintain the hives to keep them clean, and also to prevent things like European foul brood, which is a spore that can live decades in the ground before it becomes infectious with the bees. That can be treated with different chemical treatments. The real danger is American foul brood, which is a much more resistant spore that can live longer in the soil than the European foul brood. If the American foul brood spore releases and infects a hive, that hive and the brood boxes actually have to be burned to ash.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's no fun. It is no playing at all. American foul brood is a genuine killer and maybe the most lethal killer of honeybees that occurs in North America besides the mites.
That's incredible.
Yes. So the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has inspectors that come out on a friendly basis. You have to register if you have more than 2 hives, and they come out every other year to check, are you using the Langstroth hive, which is easy for inspection and easy to treat for disease and mites? And is there any wacky comb growing? Or what are other good practices that beekeepers can maintain? So the inspectors from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, they're really interested in helping the beekeepers to train up better beekeepers and to protect our population of honeybees.
Okay. I'll have one more question and then we'll wrap up today's podcast. You said they check if they're using the Langstrom frame. Did I get that right? The Langstrom?
The Langstroth.
Langstroth frame.
Right.
My bad.
Right.
Are people in America able to try different styles of I didn't know the regulations on that.
Sure. So there are about 4 different types of hives. You might even go as many as 7 different types of hives. Okay. So the Langstroth hive is a box that's slightly rectangular. It's about 12 inches by 14 inches. And along the top of the box are 2 ledges where the frame tabs ears can rest.
And you can just pull those. I've seen them pull those out, and you see the big comb and the square.
Sometimes use a frame gripper, like a pair of pliers, specially purpose-built for the frames. So the Langstroth 10 frame is the standard in North America. There is also a Langstroth 8 frame, which is also very popular. Now, there's also another type of hive called the top bar hive, which is not a box, but a long rectangular arrangement where the middle bar and then the outsides of the box are where the frames hang. And so you get about 20 frames in a long box, and the bottom of it is open, and that's how the bees get out into the environment to harvest their pollen and nectar and to gather water. There's also something called a flow hive, which is very popular, especially for new beekeepers. This was invented in Australia, and it's a hive that is completely housed in plexiglass or plastic, lucite, clear plastic, so you can see inside what's going on, and there are special ports for feeding pollen and nectar. You can actually buy that stuff. Back in the day, beekeepers had to make that stuff. But there's also a special knob you can turn, and it will dispense honey. It will.
Oh, I've seen those online. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, so they're expensive. They're about $700 to $800, but that is a 4th type of hive that is very popular these days.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming to the Common Liberty podcast. I think that's all for us today. I'm Eric.
I'm Jeffrey. Load the clip. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.